I want to hear cannons. Three-step drop, goes on the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans reaches up with one hand and grabs it in. Here they go again. Tempo mode, dropping the throw. Winston out again, throws to the left. It's intercepted into the 35. Outside the numbers to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 25, to the 20, to the 15-10. Mike Edwards, touchdown Tampa Bay. That's the dagger, my friend.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. It is Monday. Unfortunately, not a victory Monday, more of an overreaction Monday, which is usually reserved for the day after week one. But here we are, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a 3-4 record, back-to-back losses against some of the worst teams the NFL has to offer. I mean, quite honestly, back-to-back losses to one-win teams in the NFL. And listen, wins don't come easy in the NFL. But if you're Tampa Bay, after that opening stretch that they had, you couldn't have asked for a better slate of opponents to stack up a couple of wins. It's a Carolina team that they have dominated in recent years, and a Pittsburgh Steelers team that, even though Pittsburgh is a tough place to play, the Bucs just weren't prepared to be out there. And the same could be said for last Sunday against Carolina. But welcome back to the show. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Joining us, as always, on Monday as well, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback coach Shaun King. Oh, man, I wish, like I said, I wish we had a little bit more of a happier show to break down today, but it seems like, through these first 7 weeks of the NFL season for Tampa Bay, the finger has been pointed at just about everybody up until this point in the season, and it's another week, another bad loss, and now the finger points at just about everyone else. But I think, I think honestly, if we have to look at a group of people on this Bucs team who are under the most heat right now, it's going to be this coaching staff, and that includes Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich at the offensive coordinator. Shaun, let's go ahead and get into this thing. What are your thoughts from the game on Sunday, a 21-3 loss for Tampa Bay?
Well, every week I say I like to put big picture context. I think as a player, as a coach, as a organization, and definitely as a fan base, your emotional roller coaster goes up and down from week to week. So the first thing I do today is I address the fact that we're in first in the NFC South. So before I go jump off the bridge and hang myself, in my master bedroom closet, if the playoffs started today, we are in the playoffs. So I think you have to look at it and evaluate it based on that context. So I try and read, some of the local stuff in Tampa, because I live in Las Vegas now. So with the time difference, with the Raiders being in Vegas, sometimes the Bucs don't get as much coverage. And, I saw mention of, wanting to blame Todd Bowles, wanting to blame Byron Leftwich. I mean, I just think that's all way too premature. I mean, hey, has it looked as effortless as it did the first two seasons? No. But this is a different Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. And I think I've brought that up multiple times. When Brady first got here, a lot of those guys hadn't gotten paid yet. None of those guys had won a championship yet. And now they have. So it might take the embarrassment of losing to Pittsburgh and Carolina to kind of rekindle that level of commitment that they had, or that was evident the two seasons before. So I'm not ready to jump off the bridge. I'm not ready to fire Todd Bowles or fire Byron Leftwich or do anything even remotely, close to that. I just think we have to look at it. They have some things they have to get fixed. Being 32nd in rush offense, you got to get that fixed. Because what happens if you look at the best teams in football now, they all have mobile quarterbacks. They have guys that when pass protection breaks down, they can extend the play. they can create explosive plays in the pass game by moving around, allowing guys to go in the scramble drill and doing things like that. As good as Tom is, that's probably the only legitimate deficiency he has is he's not a mobile, move around, extend plays guy. So because of that, they have to figure out how to run the ball better. And if we're being honest, the defense has played winning football. I mean, they gave up 7 points in the first half yesterday. I mean, in the fourth quarter, they had given up 14. Would you like them to be able to not give up some of those explosive runs that they gave up in the second half against the Panthers? Yeah, but at the end of the day, I mean, they're playing good enough to win. They played good enough in the Steelers game to win. They played good enough in the Panthers game to win. That's the side of the ball that Todd Bowles is responsible for. So I just think they have to figure out how to run the ball better, but they are still in first in the NFC South.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about this. Probably the darkest 2 weeks that the Bucs and their fans have had in a long time, right? Back-to-back losses to two pretty bad teams, but they are still first in the NFC South because nobody seems to want to take the lead in the NFC South. Nobody seems to want to really win it, I guess. Because I mean, heck, the Panthers. If the Bucs lose to the Ravens on Thursday night and the Panthers beat the Falcons, the Panthers, who were just selling off pieces, would be in first place. So it's remarkable how that's turned out. But I think. I can get the sense where you're coming from when you're talking about Todd Bowles. However, I do think Byron Leftwich deserves to be on the hot seat at least, because there's too much talent on this offense for things to be so predictable and things to get so out of sync. I mean, to not score a touchdown against the Carolina Panthers team that was 1-5 coming into it is a fireable offense to me. And it's not all Byron Leftwich. We talk about it a lot. It's about the players executing. Mike Evans dropping a wide open 64-yard touchdown. That's not on Byron Leftwich. However, a lot of it is, the run schemes. You talked about being 32nd in running the ball. A lot of that's because they are pretty predictable in running the ball. You can look at the screen and you can tell where their run's going. They had a 2nd and 1, and they had 3 tries to get 1 yard, and they couldn't do it. Ended up on a turnover on downs, and it's just the inefficiency of this offense. And there's too much talent on this offense for me to be this bad. So I have to look at something else. And what I'm looking at is a team that it's an offense that seems like it's unprepared each week, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. And I just think it has to be better, and there has to be some sort of consequence. Maybe not this week because it's a short week, and firing a coach or whatever is difficult. But if things don't turn around soon, I think there has to be some sort of consequence for the way they're playing here.
Shaun, I agree with your take that, even at 3-4, the Bucs are still first place in the NFC South. You got to make it to the playoffs. That's what the regular season is for, and they have done that up until this point. So I don't think it is time to blow things up and start all over like a lot of people want to say the season is already a wash. I don't think that's the case. I think even at 3-4, the Bucs still have a chance to, regardless of how they put together a couple more wins and be competitive down the stretch. They have time. But let me ask you a question about this coaching staff, in particular, Todd Bowles. A lot of people are upset with him and they're emotional with him this week because he hasn't been emotional. He hasn't been, anytime you have a coach that doesn't give the press the answers they want, they're going to get all upset over it. But do you agree with Todd Bowles' approach thus far? Because, people drew comparisons to kind of Tony Dungy back in the day where he was never overreactionary. He wasn't going to yell and scream at press conferences. You wouldn't all the time see him up in arms screaming on the sidelines as opposed to maybe a Bruce Arians. And people equate that to, well, even though the talent is there, this Bucs team is a reflection of their coach. And these last 2 weeks, they've looked flat. And then people look at Todd Bowles go up on the podium and not show a lot of emotion. Do you think he is, going about this the right way? Because at the end of the day, he still is the rest of the season, and this is still his team. I don't think that's going to change before the end of the year, but people feel like he's not as upset as he should be.
Well, I know Todd personally. I've met Todd. This is his personality. It's not like, you meet him in person and he's this high energy guy like a Gruden or something. He's staying true to himself. Bill Belichick's the same way. Belichick doesn't show any emotion in the press conferences. When New England plays bad, people's reaction isn't that they played flat because Belichick doesn't show emotion in the press conference, So I just feel like coaches have personalities. As long as they stay true to who they are, man, I don't have an issue with that approach. And listen, I know everybody wants to, be radical, but I mean, Byron Leftwich was the offensive coordinator the last 2 years, and when they were, doing great, people, had elevated him to the point where I think if they could have got the GM situation right, he would be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. So I don't think 2 years of all of that good fortune. Don't forget, Jameis threw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns the year before that with Byron Leftwich as the offensive coordinator. I mean, after all of that production and all of those successes on your resume, I'm not going to give up on the guy because you get off to a 3-4 start. I remind the fan base, you guys, I think I'm older than both of you. I'm 45, so I don't know how old you were when I got to Tampa, but my first 3 years there, we started the year 3-4 every year. So sometimes, for whatever reason, one being this is a hard league. I mean, I think Seattle's in first in the NFC West. I mean, who saw that happening? When they traded Russ to Denver, that they were keeping the better quarterback in Geno Smith. So it's a tough league. And the good thing is, in spite of some of the things that we've seen from this Bucs team in 2022, they are still in first in the NFC South. That's why I started my opinion by saying that, because now, as you try and fix things, you fix them from the top, not the bottom. Think about the Green Bay Packers and the issues that they're having. And the only real difference on that roster is Devontae Adams. People used to, I don't like to make excuses because I think everybody deals with injuries, but I mean, this is a pretty fantabulous offseason for the Bucs on that offensive line. So don't think that not having your 3 interior guys from your Super Bowl team doesn't directly correlate to why they can't effectively run the ball. They are mixing and matching on the inside of that offensive line. They're not getting pushed. They're not getting the level of physicality it takes to run the ball consistently. And I think because of that, Leftwich, and if there is one criticism that I think is justified with Byron, and I think Brady has to shoulder some of it too, they're not committing to running the ball enough. I know they're not very good at it when they do it, but I think they have to make more of an effort to do it more often. But again, he probably doesn't have a lot of confidence in who they have playing on the inside of that O-line.
Well, you brought up the interior of that offensive line, and this was going to be my next question. Todd Bowles addressed it today, but in Sunday's game against Carolina, Luke Gedeke left the game, not due to injury, but a lot of people just assumed he was benched, and then we saw backup left guard come in. That's Nick Leverett. He got some lumps, and then sometime in the second half, Luke Gedeke was back in the game, and Todd Bowles addressed it today and said, if Gedeke's injury prevents him from starting on Thursday night, the plan is to still have Nick Leverett play. But as of right now, it seems like regardless of if Gedeke's healthy or not, and he's starting on Thursday night, they want to get Nick Leverett in there somehow. Do you feel like this alternating left guard look is going to pay off in the long run? Because I know we talked a whole lot about the struggles at the left guard position, and Luke Gedeke at this point getting a welcome to the NFL ceremony, but at some point I feel like you got to be consistent and maybe try and see this through. And with a guy like Nick Leverett coming in and taking snaps, I know he played well when he came in against the Panthers, but I feel like in the long run, it's going to hinder this offensive line more than anything else.
Well, I'll say this, and this is for you, Evan and Rhett. Who's the best left guard in the NFL?
Probably Quentin
Nobody.
Nelson. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
you could what the average person can name one?
Yeah.
I mean, the Bucs aren't going to win or lose because of Luke Gedeke. Would you love to have a Pro Bowl caliber player there like they've had the last couple seasons, and have a Pro Bowl center and a Pro Bowl right guard? Yeah, you would, but they don't. But I just think trying to ascertain the performance level of a rookie left guard, I've just found in my experiences that that's a futile effort that you're embarking upon. And at the end of the day, there are bigger issues. There are bigger issues because if you look at roster management, to whom much is given, much is required, right? So that means my highest paid guys have to be the guys that play the best on a consistent basis. So let's start with the guys that make the most and work our way down. You know, that's just how I evaluate not just the Bucs, but as I'm looking around the entire league, because I do think Bucs fans should, have a bigger perspective than just what's going on in Tampa. How does it correlate to what's going on around the league? Look at the Rams this year. They're struggling mighty. Look at the Packers. They're struggling mighty. Like, it's not just a Tampa Bay thing alone. So our highest paid guys, like our top 10 guys, did any of them make a big play yesterday?
No,
if you go down the payroll for the Bucs for this year, the 10 highest paid guys, did any of them make a big play yesterday?
everybody's going to look at
unless Ryan Suckup is on that list, because he's the only one to put up points. I don't know.
So that's what I'm saying. So before we get to Luke Gedeke or we get to Byron Leftwich or Todd Bowles, hey, your stars got to be stars. Like, they're the ones when, okay, people are flat or things aren't going right, they got to get us. How many sacks we have yesterday? They're playing their third string quarterback. We had one.
Yep.
Vita Vea had one sack. Like, a lot of money invested in that line. Like, how many interceptions did we get? How many caused fumbles did we have?
They haven't had a turnover on defense in 3 straight games.
Well, I think that's where you got to start. Is your highest paid guys got to start making plays. Same way on offense. Like, I don't know what's happening this year, but when I watch us play, maybe one time a game, like, we get some run after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like every catch is we're immediately tackled or we're going out of bounds. Like, you got to create explosive plays. A lot of money in that receiving core. I mean, those guys got to play better. Hey, Brady, he's missing some throws that he normally makes. So I just think when you're looking at it, it's not about finger pointing. It's about accountability. And luckily, they're in first in the NFC South. Now they got to start producing at the level that they're expected to produce at. And I'm talking to, like, those top 10 guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree that, you said it best. Stars got to be stars. Mike Evans, you catch the ball, you go up 7-0. 2 minutes into the game, like that's got to happen. Chris Godwin had a few missed opportunities. Tom Brady, like you said, missed a few throws. Donovan Smith got beat for a sack and then later on had a false start. He's one of the higher paid players on the team. So, like, I agree with what you said there. As far as, like, the specific left guard thing, I saw Nick Leverett come in and I saw him play. I mean, but he played better than Luke Gedeke in limited time. Yes. And we talk about this, you mentioned this a lot, Shaun, about how, in a small sample size, sure, those backup guys can be fine, but over time, you'll see why they're not starting. And I agree. But I just don't understand the logic as to putting Gedeke back in. To me, it shuffles your offensive line a little bit too much. Leverett was doing okay, and then you put Gedeke back in. Like, just let Leverett ride out the rest of the game and see what you have in that for next week. You've seen what Gedeke is, right? And I still think Gedeke has the potential to be a solid guard in the NFL. That doesn't change my outlook on the rest of his career. But right now, he's being a little bit overmatched. And I just think they should have given Nick Leverett a little bit more of a look, especially because he looked like a little bit more comfortable than Gedeke was in that spot.
Well, Evan, what they may be trying to do is make it a true platoon. That way, instead of Gedeke playing 70 snaps, he's playing 35. Instead of Leverett playing 70 snaps, he's playing 35. So kind of hope that the fresher player can overcome maybe some of the inexperience or deficiencies that other player would have snap 36 through 70.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't, continuity on the offensive line an important thing?
Well, listen, Evan, if they thought they had somebody that could stay out there every snap, every series, trust me, if it was Nick Leverett, if it was Evan Wanish, shit, you be out there, man.
You're right about that.
They're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you don't know what you truly have until you go out there and see what it's made of. You know what I'm saying? So if swapping the left guard position is what they feel like they need to do right now, then it's something we're going to have to buckle up and get ready for, because it's a trial and error process. At 3-4, you got to start looking around and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And hopefully Tampa Bay can look at this offensive game plan going forward as well and figure out what works.
And you got to do something different, because clearly something so far hasn't worked. So,
right.
What you've been doing hasn't been working.
So let me ask.
I think there are two things that they have to fix, guys. They've got to fix the presentation of the run game.
Yeah.
Like, they have to fix the way they're presenting it, because obviously people have self-scouted them to the point where, based on down and distance, formation, personnel group, they've really honed into, okay, what type of run schemes they want to utilize. So they got to make some adjustments there. Second thing, they got to figure red zone offense out, because this is where Gronkowski not being there has created a huge void. I mean, because we get in the red zone, and I didn't really expect to see a whole lot of Ryan Sucker, but like, I'm thinking about getting his jersey now, because he's the most recognizable offensive player we got. We have to start converting in the red zone these drives into touchdowns. So to me, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rhett, but those are the two things they have to get fixed offensively.
No, I agree 100%. And let me ask you this about the red zone possessions they have had. We're going to circle this conversation back around to the offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, who's been calling plays, but I do believe their inefficiency in the red zone, a huge part of that is just these play calls. You know, we talked about playing to the strength of your players, and they haven't really tried to get the ball in the hands of a Mike Evans off of a fade in the end zone. Normally when they do, it works. 2 touchdowns against Kansas City, had the touchdown week 1 against Dallas. You know, that's when he was back there basically earning his money. Like, that's what Mike does. And he's in year 9. He's pushing 30 years old. So he's not going to be able to win those contested catches quite that much longer. So you got to make the most use of it while you can, while you have it. But I mean, between that and just a couple of bad calls in general, there was one that I think of. I believe it was at 4th and 1 Sunday against Carolina,
when they ran
they ran a pitch.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've done that before.
It was the same exact play they ran on 4th and 1 in Pittsburgh the week before.
Exactly. Like, I knew I had seen it before, and I knew it wasn't work. We talked about what the definition of insanity is on this show. And there's a lot of runs, inside handoffs, inside the red zone that I do not care for. I can't.
Here's what I do know. Tom is actively involved in the game planning with Byron.
Yeah.
I do know there's never a time in any game, if Tom doesn't like the call play, that he can't audible to something else. So I think him and Byron are on the same page. Now it's about execution. I mean, you can make the perfect call and they don't execute it. You know, think about, again, you mentioned the Mike Evans play early in the game. I mean, that's the perfect play call. I mean,
executed
perfect ball
90% of the way.
Right. Mike catches that ball 95% of the time. This time he doesn't. You know, sometimes with Fournette, sometimes he runs like a big back. Sometimes he doesn't run like a big back. You know, that's not necessarily play call. You know, that's the execution part of it. So I just think there's a disconnect on some levels between what's being called and how it's being executed. Again, and I'm going to continue to keep this context, guys, because I don't want anybody jumping off the Skyway or the Howard Franklin. I heard they're expanding it about time.
Yeah.
Hell, wait till I leave. Hey, wait till I leave to do it, right? They're in first in the NFC South, so they can get these things fixed. And if they're playing good the last quarter of the season, you know, this was all water under the bridge. So I'm not telling people to not question or have your opinions. And I'm talking to all our listeners and viewers that are going to watch this. I'm saying just always keep context, you know, on your emotional roller coaster. You don't want to be all stressed out and your team's in first, because, you know, you could be Green Bay or you could be the Rams or you could be the Broncos. Like, it's some dumpster fires out there.
Yeah, it's bad. There's some bad teams out there. But I don't think enough people are talking about the point that you had mentioned, and that's the relationship between Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich and the communication that those guys do have. Well, one of the biggest takeaways that I had, a couple of other people were talking about it from Sunday's game, is that You know, whenever the Bucs lose a frustrating game like this, you see people getting frustrated. You see Tom Brady yelling at his offensive linemen. You see Tom Brady throwing and breaking tablets, getting fined for it. You see a couple of people going after each other, but there really wasn't any of that on Sunday. Anyone who was there were a couple of sources that confirmed who were inside the press box watching the game happen that there was no heated confrontation between Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich. Whenever they had communication with each other on Sunday, it was calm. They sat there, they talked it out, and neither of them looked like they wanted to break a tablet. I'm sure they were frustrated as all hell.
Do you want them to get into a screaming match with
No, but what I'm trying to bundle all of this up into and say is that one of the other differences between this 22 Bucs team and the last two seasons that we have seen is execution errors. I mean, nobody's talking about it, but execution errors on both sides of the football. Just like you said, the Mike Evans drop touchdown, that's not on Byron Leftwich. Leonard Fournette not able to get 1 yard, that's not necessarily on Byron Leftwich. It's one of those things where execution errors on both sides of the ball are limiting this Bucs team from where they could be. And yeah, is there an adjustment period with a new coaching staff? Yes, there is, but this team is also just not playing well.
It's not a new coaching staff, though.
I guess you're right, but I mean, how much? Okay, so let me ask you this: I think I may have asked this question before on the show, but like, what is the measuring stick to how much benefit of the doubt we can give to Todd Bowles? Because I know that this isn't a new coaching staff, but this is his first year as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is a first-year head coach in the NFL. I know he had the tenure with the Giants, or with the Jets, excuse me. But you know what I mean. You know, so how much credit are we willing to give him as a former defensive coordinator trying to get this thing under wraps? Because regardless of how smooth that transition was thought to be, I mean, he is a new head coach, and there are some adjustments they're still going to have to work through very clearly here.
I mean, to me, this team's just too talented. Like, this team is too talented to be 3-4 at this spot. So I think when it's that talented, and you know the talent's there, because yes, they have lost significant pieces. However, a lot of the core is still there, right? A lot of this core, especially on defense, a lot of the core on defense is still there. And I just think when you're 3-4, you got to look at something. And one of the biggest changes that they made this offseason was at head coach. Now, it might not have been the Bucs' choice. You know, I think it was more Bruce Arians' choice and stuff. But one of the biggest changes was at head coach. And I think that's what you're seeing right now. We talked about it, I think, on the post-game show that, you know, I think Bruce Arians may have either been lying to try and make Byron look better last year, but like he would, you know, routinely say that, oh, Leftwich has a bigger hand in it than I do with the offensive game planning. To me, it's a different offense. I know the execution isn't as good, but it is still a different offense that we're seeing. So I think Bruce Arians definitely had more influence in the offense than many believed he did. But like that's not the sole reason why they're 3-4 right now. And you know, that's why I'm willing to give Todd Bowles. You know, I'm not saying he needs to be on the hot seat or he needs to be fired right now. But at the same time, like you got the rest of the season to figure out, and at the end of the season, then we can evaluate that. But at the end of the season, if you don't feel good about Todd Bowles for the future, if he takes this talented team and only wins 6 or 7 games with them, what's that going to say when the team might not be so talented next year or the year after that? Like, what would that mean for the future of the team? And I think that's where you have to look at it.
Well, I agree with the sense of urgency. I mean, because once Brady retires, this is probably a rebuild. You know, I don't think they have, and this is no offense to any of those guys, but from what we've seen from Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask, I mean, no one thinks that, you know, one of those guys is going to lead us into the next, you know, decade of football.
Unless they get lucky, you know, with like a quarterback finding a guy. Yeah, you're probably
right.
Listen, you talk to some of these Florida Gator homers. They'll tell you that Kyle Trask is still the man for the job, and I do think to a degree, I feel like this coaching staff is going to see what he has, but not without bringing in some legitimate competition for him, because they're not going to hand him that job.
Well, I'm just strictly going by what we've seen from Kyle and Blaine in game situations, whether it be preseason or the like. So, I mean, I'm not in the building every day, so I'm not watching practice. But like I said, based on what I've seen, I don't know that, you know, the guy that's going to lead the Bucs in the next decade is in the building. I think the one thing that Bruce was for that organization is he operated like the big boss. Like you ever, you got a company, like you got like your immediate boss, you're not really uncomfortable when that person's around. Then you got the senior exec, you kind of sit up in your seat a little different. But when the big boss come through, everybody's suited and booted, yes sir, no sir. That's kind of what Arians was, kind of kept everybody on edge. I agree with him 100% that Byron was doing the majority of the game planning and was calling, almost all, if not all, of the plays when Bruce was the head coach. But Bruce was kind of like that big boss, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, Bruce is coming. So maybe they are missing a little bit of that, but, Todd deserves to build it in his image as well. And you can't judge these guys with an incomplete, like, you got to let them play the string out, and at the end of the season, I think that's when you start, okay, this looks like it's going to be an issue under him. This looks like it's going to be an area of concern. This looks like a strength. And then if I'm Jason Light, if I'm the Glazers, then, okay, how do we fill in maybe where he's deficient? Because there is no perfect head coach. I mean, look, Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record in, 15, 16 years as the head coach. And they look like a damn dumpster fire out there this year. So there is no perfect head coach. You know what I mean? Like Nathaniel Hackett. Now, if that was Todd Bowles, then where your time management issues, game management, the Bucs issues are execution related. They aren't going for two, on the first touchdown of the game. They aren't Mike McDaniel up 6, goes for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal to make it 9. Bowles isn't doing those kind of things. So I just think we have to be a little more fair, I think, when it comes to our evaluation of Todd and give him an opportunity to, coach through a full season, and then we'll see where we're at. But get it, I like this. I like the passion in the fan base more than pre-Tom Brady, where I really felt like people had stopped caring. So
well,
I really
is the standard that's been set now.
Yeah,
I think that.
yeah. Well, that's just like Evan said, that's the standard, man. And by 2019, 2018, when you're on year 4, year 5 of Jameis Winston, and the Bucs are 3-4 this time of year yet again. Let's bust out the draft boards. Most people just check out. So yeah, I will say that the intensity and the passion in the fan base is a welcome change, but there are quite a lot of people who get a little too low on the losses and a little too high on the wins. But Evan, what were you saying before I cut you off there?
No, yeah, I was agreeing. Todd Bowles should get the year. Like, I'm not saying and the Glazers have never fired a head coach midseason, so like that's not gonna, especially in year 1, like that's not gonna happen. However, I will say, the Glazers are pretty impatient owners. I mean, Shaun, you know firsthand, they fired Tony Dungy after going to the playoffs like multiple years in a row. So they fired Tony Dungy. They fired John Gruden after going 9-7, right when they had signed him to a 4-year contract extension. There were reports that they were actually considering, they decided not to do it, but they were considering firing Lovie Smith after the 2-14 first year that he had. They were considering having him as a one and done. They kept him. They went 6-10, and then they canned him after that. But they want to win. So, if this team only wins 5-6 games, then at the end of the year, I think Todd Bowles truly does deserve a reevaluation because, if you make
if the Bucs, right, yeah, I mean, if the Bucs go 5-12, I'll go over there with the petition with you. I got a feeling that they're gonna win more than 2 games.
I hope so.
They're gonna be okay. They're gonna be okay, man. I'm not. I get it though. I love the passion. I really do. But they're gonna be all right. They're in first. But Todd's been in the league a long time. Byron has. Brady has. You think Brady want to go out like this in his last year?
I talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, come on, man. He's not going out like no sucker. Like, they're gonna get it figured out.
I hope so. I hope for all Bucs fans, everybody who listens, comments and stuff, like we can sense, the frustration and stuff. Everybody was in the live stream yesterday after the game, and everybody wants. You want to know that on the same page there.
You want to know the worst part though is that even though the team isn't in the best spot, even though people are up in arms, everyone has an opinion on what's going on right now with a 3-4 Tampa Bay football team. our views have like never been better. Like yesterday was our most viewed show of the season, and I feel so terrible saying that, but everybody's so upset.
Thank you.
And
How about that? Let's use that as a time to thank everybody.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you for checking us out. We do appreciate you guys. We also hit 4,000 subscribers over there on YouTube, something we've been working towards for a long time. So we do appreciate you. It's just, I wish we were talking about happier football, and I wish people were this engaged when they're winning games. You know what I mean? Everybody's looking for a solution when they're 3-4, not when they're 2-0 with some things to fix. But
I was happy today. I was happy. I was in a good
There
mood.
you go.
When they watch it, they're gonna be shocked. And hopefully they come out like, okay, yeah, you know what? It's not that bad. We're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I hope that's the message we can convey on this podcast, because like we've said before, I mean, we said this all the way back before week 1 on the season prediction show. With this new level of confidence that Bucs fans have had with Tom Brady as their quarterback in recent years, people tend to get a little too high on the wins and a little too low on the losses. So while 3-4 is not where you expected the Bucs to be, context is important. First place in the NFC South. They can still build up from where they are, and where they are right now is first place in their division with a shot to play in the playoffs. But let's wrap it up and let's look ahead. It's a short week for Tampa Bay, so there will be no official game preview show this week. So this might kind of be it, but they've got Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens coming to town, which is going to be a pretty tough task considering we look at this defense, and I know that they aren't the main problem with this Bucs team, but the one thing that I look at, and the one thing that Baltimore is certainly looking at, is how bad this run defense has been. Evan, coming into this matchup, what do you think the Bucs have to fix on both sides of the ball to be ready to compete with this Baltimore team?
Well, again, I think it's on offense. It's about third down. I believe the Bucs were 2 for 12 on third down on offense yesterday. That's not gonna cut it. And a Baltimore team that's very talented, but Baltimore has lapses at times. They have struggled in the fourth quarter this year. They had some wins that became losses because they couldn't close things out.
They finally held on to a lead last week to hang on and beat Cleveland.
They almost blew it. They almost found a way to blow it, but they held on there. But on offense, I think you have to look at the third down offense, and you got to continue to move the sticks. And on defense, you have to force the Ravens to pass the ball, meaning you have to win on first and second down. The Ravens can't be inconsistent, just like the Chiefs were a few weeks ago. It can't be consistently 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1. That's where you get in trouble, because that's where Baltimore wants you. Baltimore wants to be able to control the clock, control the pace of the game, and run the ball. So I think those two things, if the Bucs can fix those two things, they have a decent chance to win on Thursday night. But at the end of the day, until I see it, I'm not going to believe it until I see it, because it's got to be better.
It's a good matchup. It's a good challenge for the defense. Can they contain Lamar Jackson? Limit his explosive plays. Their passing game did get Rashad Bateman back, who had missed a couple games. I think Mark Andrews went out with injury yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, because it has him for 2 targets, no catches. So I got to read up on that. I did not read up on it before the show today, but it'll be a good matchup. Baltimore's been a team that's been really good in the first half, and then it's kind of stagnated late in games. Dominated the New York Giants 2 weeks ago, had a 20-10 lead in the fourth quarter with the ball, and found a way to lose that game. Collapsed in the second half versus Buffalo, collapsed in the second half versus Miami. So, they're a team that could easily be sitting here 6-1, 7-0, but they're not. They're 4-3. So, winnable game for Tampa. I think you can have success against that Baltimore defense. I think they're really undisciplined. Talented, but undisciplined. They get a lot of defensive penalties if you watch their game. So it'd be a good opportunity for Tampa on national TV to kind of start changing the narrative a little bit about this season. Last time we were national TV, I think Patrick Mahomes was in revenge mode. And we got caught up in the blitzkrieg that was the Kansas City Chiefs. Then the time before that, we did a pretty good job against Dallas. It was interesting because that game, if you look at it from a contextual standpoint now, it started to highlight some of the issues that have become bigger issues for us. Red zone offense, lack of efficient and effective run game, lack of explosive plays in the pass game. So, hopefully we can get back to it. I know the guys are working hard, but I think Tampa finds a way to win this one.
And it's crazy to think, too, back to that Kansas City game. I think that's probably the most efficient this offense has been all year. And they were playing from behind because we obviously remember Rashad White, the fumble on the opening kickoff. You spot Kansas City 7 points. All of a sudden, you got to kick it into high gear and you're playing from behind. So, yeah, we saw the passing game actually work that week, even though it wasn't enough to take the win. You know, you're looking for more consistency on both sides of the ball, and it's going to start with execution. And even though Baltimore is a team that tends to fall apart in the second half, they're not going to make quite as many mental mistakes down the stretch. They are an experienced team. And at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback, and he's going to do what he can to keep his team in the game.
It's an interesting stretch that they have because, you have the Ravens here, and then you have the Rams who have really owned you the last 2 years. And then you have a Seahawks team, which on the surface, it looked like it was going to be, this might be a pretty easy win, but Seattle's playing good ball. So these next 3 games are really going to determine, I think, the fate of your season.
100%. I do agree. Final thoughts before we wrap this thing up. Just on the state of this Bucs team at 3-4. The message we want to send is that, hey, the season isn't over yet. You know, climb back down from the fence up there on the Skyway. You're good for right now. But, what's going to give people hope heading into these next few games here?
It's the talent that they have. And it's not, they've had the same talent the last few years. They have Tom Brady, they have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin. On the offensive side, I know we spent most of the episode on the offensive side of the ball, but I think that's where most of the concerns are, because that's where a lot of the talent is. And I think if you're looking at things from a bright side, you just have to hope that eventually these guys are so good that they're going to figure it out.
I just think we've been here before. We've had some 3-4 teams, specifically the ones I was attached to. And I remind people my first 3 years, that's what we were, 3-4. Made the playoffs every year. So it's a long season. I know it's easy to get frustrated, especially when you lose 2 games to teams that you had circled. Ravens actually come to Tampa as a small road favorite. So that's just another, motivating tool for our team. Like, the odds makers say that they're supposed to win the game. So let's go out and prove the odds makers wrong. Hopefully that cannon on that pirate ship gets a lot of action on Thursday night.
Oh, yeah. And if there's anything we've learned this year in the NFL, you can never trust the lines. I mean, the Bucs were favored to win by 13 points last week, and that clearly didn't happen. But
they were favored by that this week, too.
Oh, man. I'm surprised. I mean, even when I saw the first line open against Carolina, I think it got bumped up a couple of points after the McCaffrey trade, but I was still pretty surprised to see it that wide open. But we'll see what changes this week for Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast with former Bucs quarterback Shaun King. Thank you again for your time and coming on. We truly appreciate Get your thoughts on the game, this Bucs team, and much more. Where can the people find you on social media and check out your awesome content?
At Real Shaun King on Twitter. I host a talk show from 3 to 6 Pacific, Monday through Friday on VSIN, VSIN. You can download the app or catch us on YouTube TV, Hulu, or Fubo.
Hey, so kind of a sidebar. I know you're a big sports betting guy. That's what you do your show on. World Series is coming up. You can see our buddy Evan has got his Phillies hat on. Who's your pick, Shaun, for the World Series? You think Philly can get over Houston and just the unstoppable force that they have been this postseason?
Well, Houston's supposed to win the series. I just think Philly's bats have gotten hot. Like Rhys Hopkins and what's buddy name? It's from Las Vegas. Bryce Harper. I mean, they're on fire.
Yeah, Bryce Harper, that guy.
Hey, but Rhys Hopkins been balling too. Like they got hot at the plate at the right time. I still think. So I'm a big baseball guy, and the Phillies, and Evan, this will let you know that I know exactly what I'm talking about. The Phillies defense stinks. Like, I don't know how they've gotten to this point, and the back end of their bullpen isn't close to as good as the back end of the Astros pen. So, listen, they probably ran into the one team that can hit the long ball as well as they can, and is hot at the plate. So, the Astros are favored, but I mean, hey, Philly been finding a way, but they got to keep trying to hide that bullpen, and They started to try and blow some games on defense. That second baseman, shortstop, and third baseman y'all got, Evan, boy, they make you go sometimes.
I do think the defense has been a little bit overblown, but there's been stretches where you're like, yeah, I mean, Sir Anthony Dominguez and Jose Alvarado out of the pen have been really good, but outside of those two guys, it kind of gets a little messy. So hopefully the Philly starters can power the way most of the way through the series. Not going to be easy, but
it's going to be some great.
It's
going to be exciting though, because both parks are like hitters' parks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, it's going to be exciting. It's not going to be like a 2-1 kind of series, I don't think.
Perfect time to remind you guys as we wrap up that this podcast is brought to you by betonline.ag. Head over to their website and use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for an extra 50% bonus on your first deposit. Once again, promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, at betonline.ag. Follow the podcast on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily, the #1 Bucs fan page on Instagram. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. I know you got the staff picks coming out if that hasn't already dropped. What else you got coming this week?
Come out today, and then the stock watch will come out as well. Again, another week where you might be seeing a lot more players be stock down than stock up, unfortunately.
That's all right. We'll be looking forward to that. Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. With that being said, folks, the next time we talk to you, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be Thursday night, because I may or may not have gotten an offer to go to the game. So if it ends up being Thursday night, we'll let you know. If it's not, then it'll for sure be Friday. But the next time we talk to you, we will recap Week 8 Thursday night football matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Baltimore Ravens. Should be a good one. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish and Shaun King. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for watching, and go Bucs.